Ambassador Kim Hyun stared out the thick glass window at the massive gas giant below. Purple and gold storms swirled across its surface like angry paint strokes. He had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying. This was his first time so far from Earth, and everything felt different here at Kepler Station. "Sir, they're coming," whispered Deputy Lee So-young as she approached him. Her voice was tight with nervousness. Behind her, the other members of their team stood ready. Cultural expert Choi Woo-jin clutched his data pad filled with information about alien customs. Military officer Yoon Ji-hai kept her hand near her sidearm, though they all hoped it would never be needed. Kim turned away from the window and straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform. The fabric felt heavier than usual, weighed down by the importance of this moment. Earth's future might depend on what happened in the next few days. Their home planet was running out of the special crystals needed to power their spaceships. Without these crystals, humanity would be trapped in their small corner of the galaxy forever. The doors to the meeting hall slid open with a soft hiss. What walked through made Kim's breath catch in his throat. The aliens were nothing like the blurry photos Earth scouts had managed to take from a distance. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their faces were longer than human faces, with eyes that glowed a soft blue. Most disturbing were their movements. Too smooth, too graceful, like they were floating instead of walking. The leader of the group moved forward. His skin patterns shifted to deep red and black, which their translators said meant displeasure or anger. When he spoke, his voice came out as musical tones, but the translation device made it sound cold and harsh. So these are the primitives who dare to request an audience with the great Alterian Council. The aliens' glowing eyes swept over the human delegation, like they were inspecting insects. How amusing! Kim stepped forward and bowed slightly, the way their cultural experts had taught him. Honored members of the Alterian Council, I am Ambassador Kim Hyun of Earth. We are grateful for this opportunity to meet and discuss mutual cooperation between our peoples. One of the other aliens made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but it seemed like laughter, not the good kind. The meeting hall was enormous, designed to impress visitors from across the galaxy. The walls curved upward into a dome decorated with star maps of the local systems. In the center stood a circular table made from some kind of crystal that glowed softly from within. The aliens took their places on one side, while the humans sat across from them. Kim had prepared for this moment for months. He opened the carefully packed container beside his chair and began removing gifts. First came a small sculpture carved from earth wood, showing a tree with its branches reaching toward the sky. Next was a book of human poetry, translated into the Alterian language. Finally, he presented a recording device containing some of Earth's most beautiful music. "These are offerings from our world," Kim explained, placing each item on the table. "We hope you might appreciate learning about human culture, just as we wish to learn about yours." The lead Alterian picked up a wooden sculpture and examined it with obvious disgust. His skin patterns shifted to colors that meant contempt. Without warning, he dropped it into a waste disposal unit built into the table. The carved tree disappeared with a soft whoosh. Lee So-young gasped beside Kim, but he kept his face calm. This was not going as they had hoped. "Your people create objects from dead plant matter," the alien said. "How primitive. On our worlds, we shape living crystal that grows and changes over centuries. Your art will decay to dust in mere decades." Choi Woo-jin leaned forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we could learn from each other. We have different approaches to creativity that might complement." "Complement," another alien interrupted, his skin flashing bright yellow with what seemed like amusement. "What could beings who still use metal tools possibly teach the Alterian Council? We mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, while your species was still learning to make fire." The insults continued for nearly an hour. Every attempt the humans made to find common ground was met with mockery. When Kim mentioned Earth's diverse ecosystems, the aliens called them chaotic and uncontrolled. When Lee So-young talked about human achievements in space travel, they laughed at humanity's crude rockets. As the formal session ended, Kim realized they faced a much bigger challenge than anyone on Earth had imagined. These aliens didn't just see humans as inferior, they saw them as barely worthy of existence. The lead Alterian stood to leave, his skin patterns now showing boredom. "We will consider your request for crystal mining rights," he said in a tone that suggested no consideration would actually happen. "Do not expect our decision quickly. Important matters require careful thought, which we assume your kind would not understand." As the aliens glided out of the hall, Kim looked at his team. They all wore the same expression of shock and worry. This was going to be much harder than anyone had expected. But Kim Hyun had become Earth's top diplomat by giving up easily. Tomorrow, he would try again. After all, the future of humanity was at stake. 3 days had passed since the first meeting, and Kim Hyun felt like he was trying to climb a mountain made of ice. Every conversation with the Alterians ended the same way, with more insults and impossible demands. He sat in his small quarters aboard Kepler Station, staring at the reports he would have to send back to Earth. The Alterians had finally made their offer that morning, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. They wanted complete access to Earth's military technology, detailed maps of all human colonies, and the right to place their own people in charge of 3 human worlds. In return, they will allow humans to mine crystals from old, nearly empty sites that barely had enough material to power a single ship. "It's not even worth discussing," Lee So-young had said after the meeting. Her usually calm face was red with anger. "They're treating us like we're their slaves." Kim rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the clock on his wall. It was late, but he needed to finish his report to President Kong Soo-jin. Earth needed to know exactly what they were dealing with. These aliens didn't want partnership. They wanted surrender. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," Kim called, thinking it might be one of his team members. The door slid open, but instead of his colleagues, 3 figures in dark suits stepped inside. At first glance, they looked like station security, but something felt wrong. Their movements were too quick, too smooth. As they came closer, Kim saw their faces clearly, and his blood went cold. These weren't humans. They were Alterians wearing human-shaped disguises, but their glowing blue eyes gave them away. The leader pulled off his fake face mask, revealing the shifting skin patterns underneath. The colors were deep red and black, the same ones Kim had learned meant rage and hatred. "Ambassador Kim Hyun of the primitive Earth species," the lead Alterian said in his musical voice. But this time, there was no translator device. Kim could understand the alien language somehow, which meant these weren't official council members. "Your presence here is an insult to our great civilization." Kim slowly stood up from his desk, keeping his hands visible. "I don't understand. We came here in peace, following all diplomatic protocols. If there's been some misunderstanding—" "There is no misunderstanding," another Alterian interrupted. His skin patterns showed symbols that Kim had never seen before, probably military markings. "We are the Pure Blood Legion. We believe the Council shows weakness by even speaking to your kind." The third alien moved to block the door, while the leader stepped closer to Kim. "Your species is a disease that will spread across the galaxy if left unchecked. We have seen what happens when primitive races are allowed to grow. They consume resources, pollute worlds, and disrupt the natural order." Kim's heart was beating fast, but he kept his voice steady. "We only want to trade. We're not trying to hurt anyone or take anything that isn't freely given." "Lies," the leader hissed. "All primitive species say the same thing at first. Then they multiply like insects and demand more and more. We will not allow this to happen." The alien pulled out a weapon that looked like a rod of twisted metal. When he activated it, the tip glowed with the same blue light as their eyes. Kim had never seen anything like it, but he knew it was meant to kill. "Wait," Kim said, raising his hands. "If you do this, Earth will know what really happened. Our ships have recording devices, communication systems that send automatic signals back home. You can't hide murder." The Alterian skin patterns shifted to what Kim now recognized as cruel amusement. "Murder? There will be no murder here, Ambassador. Only a tragic accident." One of the other aliens was working on a control panel near the door. Suddenly, warning lights began flashing throughout the room. An automated voice filled the corridor outside. Warning, life support failure in Section 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Kim realized what they were doing. They were going to make it look like the station systems had failed, causing the air to leak out into space. His death would seem like an accident, just bad luck in the dangerous environment of deep space. Your team members are experiencing the same accident in their quarters, the leader said. Such a shame that these old stations sometimes fail without warning. Kim thought of So Young, probably working late on her own reports. Of Wu Jin, who always stayed up reading about alien cultures. Of Ji Hai, who might be the only one with a chance to fight back. They were all alone, facing the same situation he was in right now. Our people will know the truth eventually, Kim said. When they investigate, they will find exactly what we want them to find. The Alterian cut him off. Damaged life support systems, faulty air recyclers, and 4 unfortunate humans who were in the wrong place when everything went wrong. The alien raised his weapon, and Kim saw his own death reflected in those glowing blue eyes. He thought of Earth, so far away, of his family, who would never know what really happened to him, of all the humans who had hoped this mission would open a new chapter for their species among the stars. For the purity of the galaxy, the alien said and fired. The energy blast was silent and quick. Ambassador Kim Hyun died instantly, his dreams of peace dying with him. The news reached Earth exactly 7 hours and 43 minutes after Ambassador Kim Hyun died. President Kong Soo-jin was eating breakfast with her family when her emergency communicator began flashing red. She knew immediately that something terrible had happened. "Ma'am," her aide's voice crackled through the device. "We've lost contact with the diplomatic mission. Kepler Station reports a life support failure. All 4 team members are confirmed dead." Soo-jin's coffee cup slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Her daughter looked up from her homework with worried eyes, but Soo-jin was already moving toward her office. By the time she reached the presidential building, the full reports were waiting for her. The official story was simple. Old equipment had failed. Air systems had broken down. For humans had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as Soo-jin read through the technical details, something felt wrong. The failure had happened in 4 different sections at exactly the same moment. The backup systems had all been mysteriously offline for maintenance. It was too perfect, too convenient. She called an emergency meeting with her top advisors. Admiral Young Tae-hyun arrived first, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the reports. Defense Minister Park Chung-ho came next, followed by Intelligence Director Yoon Mi-ra. They all reached the same conclusion without speaking it out loud. This wasn't an accident. Director Yoon said finally, "The probability of this type of system failure is less than 1 in 10 million. Someone wanted our people dead." President Soo-jin stared at the photos of Kim Hyun and his team. She had known Kim personally, had chosen him for this mission because of his skill at finding peaceful solutions to difficult problems. He had believed that all intelligent species could learn to work together if they just tried hard enough. "What do we do?" asked Minister Park. "File a formal protest? Demand an investigation?" Admiral Young shook his head. "They'll deny everything. Blame old equipment, poor maintenance, bad luck. We have no proof, and they know it." Soo-jin stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over Seoul. Millions of people went about their daily lives below, unaware that everything was about to change. For 50 years, Earth had followed a policy of peaceful expansion into space. They had always tried to negotiate first, fight only as a last resort. But what happened when the other side refused to even let you negotiate? "Call an emergency session of the Global Assembly," she said. "Every representative, every world leader. I want them all here in 6 hours." The Assembly Hall had never been so quiet. Representatives from every nation on Earth, governors from colony worlds, and military commanders from across human space all waited for their president to speak. The holographic displays showed Kim Hyun's face, along with those of his murdered team members. Soo-jin stepped up to the podium and looked out at the hundreds of faces staring back at her. Her voice was calm, but those who knew her could hear the steel underneath. 4 days ago, Ambassador Kim Hyun left Earth carrying our hopes for peaceful contact with an alien civilization. He believed, as we all did, that intelligent beings could find common ground through understanding and respect. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. They murdered him for that belief. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, but Soo Jin continued. The Altrian Council, or agents working for them, killed our diplomatic team and tried to make it look like an accident. They have shown us what they think of human life, human hopes, and human dreams of peaceful coexistence. The president's next words would be remembered for centuries. As of this moment, all human diplomatic missions in alien space are terminated. Every human citizen, trader, explorer, and scientist in non-human territory will return home immediately. We are recalling our people from every alien world, every mixed station, every joint research facility. Admiral Jung felt his chest tighten. He had been expecting something like this, but hearing it made real was still shocking. The president was essentially declaring that humanity was withdrawing from galactic civilization entirely. Furthermore, Soo Jin continued, all civilian ship construction is hereby suspended. Every shipyard, every factory, every research facility will be converted to military production immediately. Operation Homecoming begins now. In the days that followed, the galaxy watched in confusion as humans everywhere began packing up and leaving. Traders abandoned profitable routes. Scientists left half-finished research projects. Colonists on frontier worlds loaded everything they could carry on to transport ships and headed back toward Earth. The Alterians were delighted. High Regent Morthak made a public statement. The primitives have finally learned their place. Perhaps now they will stay in their small corner of space where they belong. But some alien observers were more thoughtful. The Keth Empire's intelligence services noted that humans weren't just retreating. They were consolidating. Ships that had been scattered across dozens of systems were all heading toward the core human worlds. Resources that had been spread thin were being concentrated. On Earth, Admiral Jung oversaw the greatest military buildup in human history. Shipyards that had built peaceful cargo vessels and colony transports were retooled overnight. The plans they followed weren't for exploration ships or trading vessels. They were for something that had never existed before, weapons designed specifically to fight aliens who thought humans were too primitive to matter. President Soo Jin stood in her office late one night, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the beings who had killed Kim Hyun were probably celebrating. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about knowing their place in the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 months after Ambassador Kim Hyun's death, the galaxy was about to learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped trying to be civilized. Admiral Jung Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching through the view screen as 11 other massive ships took their positions around him. Each vessel was 5 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. The ships looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels humans had built for decades. These were built for one purpose only, to make the Alterians pay for what they had done. All ships report ready, Admiral, came the voice of Captain Lee Dong-min from the communication station. The captain's younger brother had been killed in a recent Alterian attack on a human research station. Like everyone in the fleet, he had personal reasons for being here. Jung nodded slowly. For months, Earth's best scientists had studied every piece of information they had about Alterian technology. They had found weaknesses that the aliens didn't even know existed. The Alterians had grown comfortable after centuries of being the strongest power in this part of the galaxy. They had become careless. Open a channel to all Alterian worlds, Jung ordered. The communications officer's hands moved across his controls, and suddenly Jung's face was being broadcast to every Alterian planet, station, and ship in the sector. When Jung spoke, his voice was calm but carried the weight of humanity's anger. I am Admiral Jung Tae-hyun of the Earth Defense Fleet. 6 months ago, you murdered Ambassador Kim Hyun and his team when they came to you seeking peace. You chose to answer diplomacy with assassination. You taught us that strength is the only language you understand. Today we speak your language. On the bridge of the Alterian flagship Infinite Glory, High Regent Morthak watched the human transmission with amusement. His skin patterns showed colors of contempt and superiority. Around him, his officers were laughing at what they saw on their screens. 12 small ships against the might of the Alterian fleet. Morthak's musical voice filled with mockery. These primitives truly don't understand what they face. We have over 300 vessels in the system alone. But his laughter died when the first human ship opened fire. The weapon that struck infinite glory was unlike anything the Alterians had ever encountered. Instead of the energy beams or plasma charges they expected, the humans used something they called a quantum disruptor. The blast didn't just damage the Alterian ship's shields. It made them stop existing entirely. Morthak watched in horror as his flagship protective barriers simply disappeared. Emergency alarms began screaming throughout the ship as systems failed one after another. His officers rushed to their stations, trying to understand what was happening. "Impossible!" shouted his weapons commander. "Our shields are made from crystallized time itself. Nothing can penetrate them." "The humans have found a way," Morthak whispered, his skin patterns now showing fear for first time in decades. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 2 hours. The Alterian fleet had been designed to fight other energy-based civilizations. Their tactics, their weapons, their defenses, everything was built around fighting enemies who used similar technology. But humans had taken a completely different approach. While the aliens had spent centuries perfecting energy weapons, humans had developed something called matter conversion bombs. These devices could turn any material, ship hull, asteroid, even empty space, into pure energy. When they struck an Alterian vessel, the ship didn't just explode. It simply ceased to exist. Commander Yoon Ji-hai, now leading the assault division, watched from her ship as another Alterian cruiser vanished in a flash of light. She thought of Ambassador Kim, who had believed these creatures could be reasoned with. She thought of Deputy Lee So-young, who had died trying to build bridges between species. Their deaths would not be forgotten. "Admiral," came Captain Lee's voice over the communication system, "Alteria Prime's orbital defenses are down. We're ready to begin the surface bombardment." Jung looked at the blue and green world spinning below them. Millions of Alterians lived on that planet, most of them probably unaware of what their government had done to the human diplomatic team. For a moment, he hesitated. This was not the kind of war Earth had ever fought before. Then he remembered Kim Hyun's final message to Earth, recorded just hours before his murder. "I still believe we can find peace with these people. We just have to keep trying." "Target military installations only," Jung ordered. "We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to make sure they can never threaten human diplomats again." The bombardment was surgical and precise. Every Alterian military base, every weapons factory, every shipyard was destroyed within minutes. But the cities, the farms, the schools, all the places where ordinary Alterians lived their lives, remained untouched. As the dust settled over the ruined military complexes, Jung opened another channel to the surviving Alterian leadership. "Hi, Regent Morthak," he said, knowing the alien was listening from whatever was left of his fleet. "You wanted to teach humanity about our place in the galaxy. Consider this lesson complete. We are not the primitives you thought we were. We are not weak, and we do not forget those who murder our peacebringers." The message was received across dozens of star systems. Other alien civilizations watched the destruction of the mighty Alterian fleet and began to reconsider their own relationships with humanity. The galaxy had just learned that there was something far more dangerous than human violence. Human patience finally coming to an end. High Regent Morthak's surrender message came through trembling patterns of light across his skin. The once proud leader of the Alterian Council now cowered in what remained of his command center, surrounded by the wreckage of his mighty fleet. His musical voice, which had once commanded respect across a dozen star systems, now shook with fear. We yield to human demands." He broadcast on all frequencies, his skin showing colors that meant complete submission. "The Alterian Council formally surrenders to Earth forces. We beg for mercy." Admiral Jung sat in his command chair aboard the Retribution, watching the aliens plead with cold eyes. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The Alterian military was broken, their fleets destroyed, their weapons factories turned to ash. What had once been the most feared power in this sector now existed only at humanity's mercy. Tell him we'll discuss terms. Jung said finally, but he comes to us. On Earth. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had never heard of Earth before suddenly found themselves studying human military capabilities with great interest. The Keth Empire, which had been planning to claim abandoned human colonies, quietly canceled their expansion plans. The Nexus Federation sent urgent diplomatic messages requesting meetings to discuss mutual cooperation. President Kong Soo-jin stood before the Global Assembly once again, but this time the mood was very different. The representatives who had watched her declare humanity's withdrawal from galactic affairs 6 months ago now saw her as she announced the terms of Alterian surrender. The Alterian Council will be dissolved immediately, she declared. Their military forces will be reduced to internal security only. They will pay full compensation to the families of our murdered diplomats and every human family affected by their actions. The terms were harsh, but not cruel. Unlike the Alterians, humans did not believe in destroying entire civilizations. Instead, they would be watched, controlled, and gradually integrated into a new order where diplomacy was protected and murder would never again be used as a tool of policy. 3 months later, delegations from across the galaxy arrived at Earth. They came in ships of every design imaginable, crystalline vessels from ethereal collective biomechanical craft from the hive worlds, and sleek metal ships from a dozen different species. All of them wanted the same thing, to make peace with humanity before they became the next target. The new Earth Diplomatic Center was built where Ambassador Kim Hyun had lived. It was a massive complex that could house representatives from hundreds of different species, with advanced translation systems and cultural accommodation facilities. But unlike the old diplomatic traditions, every alien delegation was accompanied by human military observers. Captain Park Min-ho, who had served as Kim's security chief during the failed mission to Kepler Station, now held the title of Director of Diplomatic Security. He walked through the center's main hall, watching as beings from across the galaxy negotiated trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and mutual defense pacts. All of them were very careful to be polite to their human hosts. "It's strange, isn't it?" said Director Yoon Mi-ae as she joined him near the large memorial wall. The wall displayed the faces of Kim Hyun, Lee So-young, Choi Woo-jin, and Yoon Ji-hae, the 4 diplomats whose deaths had changed everything. 6 months ago, these same species wouldn't even acknowledge we existed. Now they compete to offer us the best deals. Park nodded, reading the inscription below the memorial photos. They sought friendship among the stars. Their sacrifice taught us that peace must sometimes be carved from darkness with fire and steel. The change in galactic politics was remarkable. Species that had spent centuries fighting each other now found themselves working together, united by their shared understanding that humanity was not to be provoked. The Earth Accords became the new foundation of interstellar law, with strict protections for diplomatic personnel and severe penalties for any violation. But the most significant change was in humanity itself. Earth's shipyards continued producing both exploration vessels and warships in equal numbers. Human colonies began expanding again, but this time they were defended by orbital platforms and patrol fleets. The galaxy had taught humans that goodwill and peaceful intentions were not enough to survive among the stars. Admiral Jung, now Supreme Commander Human Space Forces, maintained the Retribution Fleet as a reminder to anyone who might forget the lessons of the Alterian War. The 12 massive ships patrolled human space and beyond, their presence alone enough to prevent most conflicts before they could begin. President Soo-jin received regular reports from human diplomats working throughout the galaxy. Unlike Kim Hyun's mission, these negotiators were respected, protected, and listened to carefully. The difference was simple. Everyone knew what happened to those who harmed human peace seekers. On the first anniversary of Ambassador Kim's death, Soo-jin stood before his memorial and spoke to the assembled crowd of humans and aliens alike. Her words were broadcast across known space. Kim Hyun believed that all intelligent beings could learn to live in peace, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy. His faith in diplomacy cost him his life, but his death taught us something equally important. Sometimes peace can only be built on a foundation of strength. She looked up at the stars, where human ships now traveled freely under protection of the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever seen. We will never again send our diplomats unprotected into the darkness. And we will never again allow murder to be used as an answer to peaceful words. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology. It was their willingness to transform completely when pushed beyond their limits. They had killed one human diplomat and awakened something that would reshape the cosmic order forever.